My beloved child, before a single answer appeared, before a single hidden detail was uncovered, a strange silence began surrounding your connection. It was not the silence of distance. It was not the silence of forgetting. It was the silence that comes when someone thinks they know the whole story, and suddenly realizes they may know almost nothing at all. Somewhere, your soulmate reached a point where questions became louder than assumptions. They had tried to understand you through memories, through emotions, through scattered moments that never seemed to fit together. Yet every time they thought they had figured you out, another layer appeared. Another contradiction. Another mystery. And eventually, curiosity became impossible to ignore. That is when a decision was made behind the scenes. Not because they wanted to judge you. Not because they wanted to control the situation. But because they felt there was something about you that nobody was seeing clearly. Something important. Something hidden in plain sight. And what happened next was not what they expected. Don't skip, because the first thing discovered was not a secret about your past. It was something far more surprising. The investigator found a pattern. A pattern so unusual that it immediately stood out. Everywhere your name appeared, there was evidence of kindness that never asked for recognition. Moments where you helped people who could offer nothing in return. Conversations where you listened when nobody else would. Choices that brought no reward except peace in your own heart. These were not dramatic events. They were quiet ones. The kind that most people overlook. Yet somehow, they formed a picture that became impossible to ignore. And the more this picture grew, the more uncomfortable your soulmate became. Not because the discoveries were negative. Quite the opposite. They were positive in a way that challenged everything they believed about themselves. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. The investigator kept searching, expecting eventually to uncover flaws large enough to balance the story. Everyone has imperfections. Everyone has moments they wish they could erase. Yet every new piece of information seemed to reveal the same thing. You carried yourself differently than most people. Not perfectly. Not flawlessly. But intentionally. Even during difficult seasons, you continued moving with a quiet strength that few ever noticed. And this is where the situation became complicated. Your soulmate had prepared themselves for many possibilities. They had prepared to discover disappointment. They had prepared to discover confusion. They had even prepared to discover reasons to walk away. But they never prepared themselves for the possibility that the person they were investigating would turn out to be far more genuine than they imagined. Suddenly, the image they had created in their mind began falling apart. Every assumption became unstable. Every conclusion became uncertain. And instead of bringing clarity, the investigation created even more questions. Because how do you react when someone turns out to be better than the story you told yourself about them? How do you process a truth that forces you to examine your own fears? Somewhere deep inside, your soulmate found themselves facing a realization they never expected. The problem was never understanding who you were. The problem was accepting what your presence revealed about them. That realization arrived quietly. It did not announce itself. It simply appeared one evening like a single light in a dark room. And from that moment forward, they could not stop thinking about it. The investigator's report was supposed to provide certainty. Instead, it opened a door that had remained closed for far too long. Something huge is waiting for you in this story, because the most surprising discovery has not been revealed yet. The report contained one final observation. Not a fact. Not a record. Not a document. An observation. It described you as someone who consistently chose authenticity over appearance. Someone who remained true to themselves even when it would have been easier to become someone else. And strangely enough, that single observation hit harder than anything else. Because your soulmate suddenly understood why your energy had always felt different. Why conversations with you lingered in their mind long after they ended. Why forgetting you never seemed possible. The truth was not shocking because it exposed a secret. The truth was shocking because it exposed sincerity. And sincerity has a way of unsettling people who have spent years hiding parts of themselves. Yet this is only the beginning. Because after reading those final pages, your soulmate made a decision that nobody saw coming. A decision connected to something they have never admitted aloud. A decision that will make everything discovered so far feel small compared to what comes next. And as that decision quietly takes shape behind the scenes, one question continues echoing in their heart. What happens when someone stops investigating another person, and finally starts investigating themselves? The answer is closer than anyone realizes. And that answer changes everything. A forgotten detail is about to return to the surface, and strangely enough, it is not coming from the investigator's report at all. It is coming from the silence that followed it. After reading every page, your soulmate expected relief. They expected the questions to disappear. They expected certainty to arrive and settle everything once and for all. But that is not what happened. Instead, they found themselves staring at the same pages again and again, searching for something that was not written there. The facts were clear. The observations were complete. Yet a deeper truth seemed to be hiding between the lines, waiting to be noticed. And the harder they searched, the more one realization followed them everywhere they went. The investigator had uncovered information about your actions, your character, and the way you moved through the world. But there was one thing no report could ever explain. Why did your presence affect them so deeply? Why did thoughts of you continue appearing during ordinary moments? Why did your name carry a feeling that refused to fade? Don't skip, because this is where the story begins to shift in an unexpected direction. For the first time, your soulmate stopped focusing on who you were and started examining their own reactions. They replayed old conversations. They remembered small details they once dismissed. A certain smile. A certain sentence. A moment that seemed ordinary at the time but now felt strangely important. And as those memories resurfaced, something remarkable happened. The image they had created of you started changing. Not because new information arrived, but because old memories suddenly looked different when viewed through a clearer lens. They began noticing things they had overlooked before. Times when you showed patience without being asked. Times when you offered understanding without expecting recognition. Times when you quietly revealed your heart while everyone else was distracted by louder things. Those moments had always been there. They simply had not been fully seen. Stay till the end. Because something important is waiting for you. The investigator thought the assignment was finished. Yet before closing the case completely, they shared one final thought. It was not included in the official report. It was spoken privately. Calmly. Almost casually. But those words lingered longer than any document ever could. They said that people often hire investigators hoping to uncover hidden truths about others. Yet sometimes the most surprising discovery is realizing there was never a mystery to solve. Sometimes the mystery exists inside the person doing the searching. Those words landed heavily. Because deep down, your soulmate knew exactly what they meant. The investigation had not exposed something hidden within you. It had exposed something hidden within them. A fear of vulnerability. A fear of disappointment. A fear of trusting what their heart already suspected. And suddenly, the distance they felt was no longer between you and them. It was between who they were and who they wanted to become. Something huge is waiting for you, because this realization opened a door they had avoided for a very long time. Behind that door was a question they could no longer ignore. What if the reason they kept searching for answers was because they already knew the answer? What if every doubt had simply been a shield protecting them from a truth that felt too significant to face? The more they sat with that question, the quieter everything became. Not empty silence. Meaningful silence. The kind that appears when a person stops running from themselves. And within that stillness, another memory surfaced. A memory connected to a moment neither of you may have thought was important. A brief exchange. A passing conversation. Something simple. Yet suddenly it felt like a missing piece sliding into place. They remembered how natural it felt to be themselves around you. No performance. No pretending. No need to impress anyone. Just honesty. Just ease. Just a feeling that rarely appeared anywhere else. And that realization was far more powerful than any fact an investigator could uncover. Because facts explain what happened. Feelings explain why it mattered. For the first time, your soulmate began understanding the difference. And once they saw it, they could not unsee it. The report was now sitting untouched on a table. The pages that once felt so important no longer held their attention. Their focus had shifted somewhere entirely different. Toward a realization still unfolding. Toward a truth still finding its voice. Toward a choice that had not yet been made, but was moving closer with every passing day. Because there is something they have not admitted to anyone. Something they are only now beginning to admit to themselves. And when that hidden truth finally reaches the surface, it will connect every unanswered question, every strange coincidence, and every moment that seemed insignificant until now. The investigator's work may be finished. But the real discovery has only just begun. And what your soulmate uncovers next will make them see your entire connection through completely different eyes. The strangest part of this journey began on a day when absolutely nothing unusual was supposed to happen. No new report arrived. No message appeared. No dramatic revelation unfolded. Yet somehow, that ordinary day became impossible for your soulmate to forget. Because after weeks of searching outside themselves, they finally sat alone with their own thoughts. And what surfaced surprised them more than anything the investigator had ever uncovered. At first, it was only a feeling. Difficult to explain. Easy to dismiss. The kind of feeling people often push aside because it asks questions they are not ready to answer. But this feeling refused to leave. It followed them through quiet mornings and long evenings. It appeared in moments when the world grew still. And every time it appeared, it pointed toward the same realization. The investigation had never changed who you were. It had changed how they saw you. Don't skip. Because this subtle difference became the key to everything. For so long, your soulmate believed understanding came from gathering information. More facts. More details. More certainty. Yet now they were discovering that understanding sometimes arrives through reflection rather than investigation. Sometimes the heart notices what the mind spends months overlooking. And little by little, they started recognizing something remarkable. Every story they had heard about you carried the same quiet thread. Not perfection. Consistency. Not grand gestures. Authenticity. Not a carefully crafted image. A genuine spirit that remained steady regardless of who was watching. The more they reflected on this, the more another question appeared. Why had that been so difficult to believe in the first place? That question lingered longer than expected. Because the answer had very little to do with you. It had everything to do with old fears they carried long before your paths crossed. Old disappointments. Old misunderstandings. Old moments that quietly taught them to doubt what felt meaningful. Without realizing it, they had been looking at you through lenses created by experiences that belonged to another chapter of their life. And now those lenses were beginning to crack. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. One evening, while revisiting memories they had almost forgotten, your soulmate noticed a pattern that had been hiding in plain sight. The moments they remembered most clearly were never the dramatic ones. They remembered the small things. A conversation that brought unexpected peace. A moment when they felt understood without needing to explain themselves. A simple exchange that stayed with them far longer than logic could justify. Those memories carried a different kind of weight. Not because they were extraordinary. Because they were real. And suddenly, a truth emerged that felt impossible to ignore. The investigator had searched through records, timelines, and information. But the most convincing evidence had been present all along. It lived inside the memories that refused to fade. The moments that continued returning no matter how hard they tried to move on. The quiet reminders that appeared when they least expected them. Something huge is waiting for you, because this realization led to another discovery. For the first time, your soulmate stopped asking, "Who are you really?" Instead, they began asking, "Why does this connection continue feeling unfinished?" That question opened a door they had not planned to open. Behind it waited emotions they had carefully organized and stored away. Emotions they thought were resolved. Emotions they thought time had already answered. Yet there they were, clearer than ever. Not demanding attention. Simply waiting to be acknowledged. And the more honestly they looked at those feelings, the harder it became to deny a simple truth. You had become part of a story they never truly stopped reading. Even during periods of distance. Even during moments of uncertainty. Even during times when life moved in completely different directions. Some part of this connection remained present. Quiet. Steady. Patient. Almost as if it was waiting for the right moment to be understood. That realization brought both comfort and confusion. Comfort because it explained so much. Confusion because it challenged so much. Because if the connection was truly that meaningful, what were they supposed to do next? That question remains unanswered. For now. But something has already changed. The investigation that began with curiosity has ended with reflection. The doubts that once felt powerful are becoming smaller. And the version of you that existed inside their imagination is being replaced by something far more significant. The real you. Not the person assumptions created. Not the person fears projected. Not the person uncertainty imagined. The person who quietly remained themselves the entire time. And as that realization continues growing, another truth is beginning to rise alongside it. A truth your soulmate is not fully ready to speak aloud yet. A truth connected to a decision they have been postponing for much longer than anyone realizes. Because somewhere between the final pages of that report and the memories they can no longer ignore, they have started understanding something profound. The investigation never revealed who you are. It revealed how much you matter. And the moment they fully accept what that means, everything they have been holding back may begin to change in ways neither of you expected. That moment is closer than it appears. And when it arrives, the next chapter will begin with a choice that can no longer be postponed. A quiet shift is happening now, and almost nobody around your soulmate can see it. From the outside, everything appears normal. Their routine looks the same. Their conversations sound the same. Their days continue moving forward as they always have. Yet beneath the surface, something has changed so deeply that even they are struggling to find words for it. What once felt like curiosity has become contemplation. What once felt like uncertainty has become awareness. And what once felt like distance is beginning to feel surprisingly close. The strange part is that this transformation did not happen overnight. There was no single moment where everything suddenly made sense. Instead, it arrived in fragments. Small realizations appearing one after another. Tiny pieces connecting until a larger picture slowly emerged. Don't skip, because one of those pieces changed everything. Recently, your soulmate found themselves revisiting something they had ignored for a very long time. Not a message. Not a photograph. Not a report. A feeling. A feeling that always seemed to appear whenever your name entered their thoughts. For months, perhaps even longer, they had explained it away. Coincidence. Curiosity. Habit. But now those explanations no longer felt convincing. Because habits fade. Curiosity eventually finds answers. Coincidences lose their power. Yet somehow, this feeling remained. Steady. Persistent. Quietly alive. And that realization led them somewhere unexpected. Instead of asking why they kept thinking about you, they started asking why they kept trying not to. The answer did not arrive immediately. In fact, it took longer than they expected. But when it finally appeared, it carried a truth they could no longer avoid. Sometimes people resist what matters most because they know it has the power to change them. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you. That truth stayed with them. It followed them through ordinary moments. It appeared while they were busy. It surfaced during conversations that had nothing to do with you. And each time it returned, it seemed to whisper the same message. Stop looking for reasons to dismiss what your heart already understands. At first, they pushed back. Not because they wanted to. Because acceptance felt unfamiliar. Acceptance meant admitting that the investigation had not created these feelings. Acceptance meant acknowledging that something meaningful existed long before any report was written. Acceptance meant recognizing that every answer they searched for had quietly been standing in front of them the entire time. That realization was both comforting and unsettling. Comforting because it brought clarity. Unsettling because clarity often requires action. And action was exactly what they had been avoiding. Something huge is waiting for you, because the next discovery came from a place they never expected. A trusted friend noticed the change. Not because your soulmate said anything. Because their energy had shifted. There was a different calmness in them. A different attentiveness. A different way of speaking whenever certain topics appeared. At first, the friends simply listened. Then one day, after a long conversation, they asked a question so simple that it stopped everything. If you're still thinking about them after all this time, what are you actually waiting for? The room grew quiet. Not because there was no answer. Because there were too many. Your soulmate had spent so much time gathering information that they never fully examined their hesitation. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of timing. Fear of vulnerability. Fear of discovering that what felt meaningful to them might not feel meaningful to someone else. Yet as they sat with that question, another realization appeared. Every meaningful connection requires courage at some point. Not certainty. Not guarantees. Courage. And for the first time, they began wondering whether their search for certainty had simply been a way of delaying courage. That thought stayed with them long after the conversation ended. In fact, it continues following them even now. Because deep inside, they know a chapter is ending. Not the chapter involving questions. The chapter involving avoidance. The chapter where they could pretend there was still more investigating to do. The chapter where they could hide behind uncertainty. Those chapters are becoming harder to maintain. Because the truth is becoming clearer. The investigator uncovered facts. The memories uncovered meaning. And now the heart is uncovering intention. A powerful combination. Perhaps the most powerful combination of all. Because once intention enters the story, everything changes. Suddenly, possibilities begin appearing where walls once existed. Suddenly, conversations that seemed impossible begin feeling necessary. Suddenly, the future stops feeling like something distant and starts feeling like something waiting. And there is one final realization beginning to form. A realization your soulmate has not fully shared with anyone. Not yet. It arrived quietly one evening while reflecting on everything that has happened. The investigation. The memories. The unanswered questions. The emotions they tried to explain away. And as they looked at the entire journey, one thought stood above all the others. What if the most important discovery was never about finding out who you are? What if the most important discovery was realizing who they become when they stop running from what they feel? That question remains with them. Growing stronger. Growing clearer. Growing impossible to ignore. And somewhere ahead, closer than they realize, a moment is approaching where reflection will no longer be enough. Because a choice is taking shape. A real choice. One that carries the potential to change the direction of this entire story. And when that moment finally arrives, your soulmate will have to decide whether they are willing to trust what their heart has been trying to tell them all along. The answer is already beginning to reveal itself. But what happens next will surprise even them.